Hello, fellow baggers, and welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge. And we are here to preview the round 10 clash with Sydney up at the SCG. And going to be an interesting game. Interesting game. I think it's another team, Sydney, very much like St Kilda, similarly placed to us, where they've kind of had their struggles, and especially in recent times for the Swans. But as we always know, when we face them at the SCG, they are a different beast. And it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us to overcome them. But we are here to analyze things in terms of, the stats side of things, of course, matchups, the possible ins and outs, and of course, we will come up with a little bit of a verdict as to our expectations and what we think will happen. So let's have a look, first and foremost, as we always do, at just the raw stats before we deep dive into anything. Of course, as I mentioned at the SCG, recent encounters. Now, the past three matches here, we all remember, of course, I just want to mention this outright. I wasn't sitting in my seat here. I was out of my seat probably 99% of the time, of course, referring to that final against the Swans at the MCG in 2023. One of the best games I have attended, only eclipsed, I think, by that Melbourne game the week after that. So an incredible game, and that was the last time we actually beat them, because the other two encounters we have fallen short, and both of those games were at the SCG, and most recently it was last year in round 10, so literally 12 months ago, almost to the day. Actually, it almost will be, yeah. And so the score there was 17-15, 117 to Carlton, 9-11, 65. And even prior to that, regular season game, round 11, it seems as though we kind of always play them round 10, round 11. I don't know what the go is there. It's a part of, I guess, the AFL's fix in the fixture. Very strange. But anyway, prior to that, we ended up falling short by 26 points, 11-11, 77 to 6-15, 51. And that was a very, very inaccurate game, that one there. But we are here to have a look at, the potential ins and outs as well. But we will actually just scroll down here and see the form guide, because even just looking at this just before, I couldn't believe that. I mean, it's obviously happened, but to see it on paper is another thing. Like, we've won 4 of our past 5 games, which doesn't feel right. Obviously the game against Adelaide kind of pulled us back down to reality a bit. And, I kind of forget that we've been as fortunate as we have in terms of the number of wins that we've had compared to, the start of the season when it was just seemed like loss. So if we look at the Swans, they're actually like a opposite to us. They're like a mirror, because you can see there the week that we lost to the Crows was the week that Sydney won, and they've lost every other week that we've actually won. So, a mirror opposite to us, and very interesting seeing that. But we scroll down and we'll have a look at the head-to-head stats in terms of averages for a number of categories, as we always do, just to try and work out, where we've got the edge and where we could potentially expose them to exploit them on game day. So disposals, season average, we eclipse the Swans by around about 16 disposals, and inside 50s, very, very even there. In fact, 54.9 to 55.7. And clearance-wise, we hold the mantle here, 5 in our favour. Marks, we have 10 more on average than the Swans. Disposal efficiency in favour of the Swans by roughly almost 2. Possession-wise, we eclipse the Swans by around about 18. Free kicks in our favour, which is always a bonus, I guess. Tackles, now this is a big thing as well. I love to see this. When we come up against teams that aren't tackling or applying as much pressure, because, tackles are one thing, but it's just chasing 1%ers, second, third efforts in terms of just being able to apply that perceived pressure is almost just as good as tackling, because it forces turnovers and forces the opposition to panic and dispose of the ball without great efficiency. So I really like to see the fact that we have eclipsed the Swans in terms of averages, 67.1 to 52.9. And hopefully this continues, because that part of our game was a big, big reason why we won against the Saints. It was a highly contested, congested game, as we know. And even prior to that, we look at the wins against the Cats, even North Melbourne as well. A lot of that was built off pressure and tackling as well. So just the basics there, but it is a big, big thing that goes a long, long way. So I like to see that. In terms of kicks, There's 9 more in our favour. Hitouts in the favour of the Swans as well. And it's going to be an interesting encounter here because as I record this, news has come out that TDK is in a little bit of doubt. Hopefully it's not the case. He has copped a little bit of a larynx injury, which he spoke about post-match. He spoke to Ruby Schleicher and she made a little bit of a joke because she's got very much a gravelly type voice. And she was like, oh, you've got a voice like me now. And he was saying he copped a little bit of whack in the throat. And he got through the interview totally fine, was breathing okay. But, it's one thing to, then have another scan off the back of that. And if it's come up with bruising or anything else, I think they might try and be a little bit conservative. Hopefully he is okay. Because we don't want him to cop another whack in that area because it does cause a fair bit of damage. We all remember Ed Kerner, who's got a really gravelly voice. He copped a few hits to his larynx, and that's part of the reason why his voice is actually like that. Damaged his voice box, unfortunately, but the main thing is breathing and everything else, the much more important side of things there. So we'll wait and see what comes out at team selection, but we hope that he does make the trip and he is able to get up because it's going to be a very, very big matchup against Brodie Grundy. Contested possessions in our favour there by around about roughly 13 contested possessions more, should say. Turnovers, the Swans are actually conceding around about 4 or thereabouts. Or was it 3? 3.5 if you want to be exact. So there we go. Those are kind of the head-to-head stats there. But let's take a little bit of a deep dive, as we always do, at Wheelo Ratings, the website that we love to see. And analyze things a little bit further. And we do so in terms of score sources and what we concede to opposition teams alongside that of the Swans. So score sources, we've just had a look here quickly, as you can see that column with the turnovers, that the Swans, they concede round about what the AFL average is, which is 46.2, whereas we concede the third least in the competition, which is good to see. And again, it surprises me because, we think back to the early part of the season when we were not very efficient with the ball movement. We were turning over the ball a fair bit, it seemed. But, we've kind of turned that around now, and we are conceding the third least scores via turnovers. So, very good to see. But stoppage-wise, we concede again, the fifth least in the competition scores via stoppage. The Swans, they concede about 3 more positions up from us, 32.4, so relatively even-ish enough. Score sources via kick-in, and we concede actually the 4th most, whereas the Swans, they concede, 3 positions less than us. So we're both not very good in that area, and we don't want, obviously opposition teams to go from end to end, which has been happening at various stages. I guess in terms of transition as well, if we concede, if we kick it behind or the opposition concedes a behind, they tend to kick in very, very quickly because they expose us in terms of our lack of setup. And I think defensively we're caught out on transition there. When they have the ball, they quickly move it and we're caught out. So we really need to tighten up on that. But relatively even across the board. In terms of team averages, we'll just have a quick look at that in terms of score sources for both teams. And kick-ins, we actually score the Swans actually score the second least via kick-ins. So when I was just looking at the opposition averages of what we concede, and we concede points via kick-ins, it looks as though the Swans actually don't score many points via kick-ins. So at least that marries up and, kind of outweighs it in terms of, the Swans not being able to, they could still capitalise on it, but, it's not a big part of their game unless they kind of play for that and tactically set up for it. Naturally, it doesn't come naturally to them. So compared to us, we actually score a little bit more than the Swans, 3.3 compared to their 2.8. In terms of stoppages, we actually score 33.9, which is just below the season average, or the AFL average. And the Swans, they only score, the 4th least via stoppages. So that's an area of the ground that, we still can't be lax in, but, we know what happened against the Crows when we were exposed for the lack of pressure and, setup and everything else in the middle. So we really can't be dropping our bundle there. But, it does show that at least they're not, it doesn't come natural to them in terms of capitalising in terms of the middle. In terms of turnover, score sources here. So we actually score, what's that, the third, sixth, seventh most, seventh least, I should say, points via turnover. And the Swans, they actually score 3, 4, 5, the sixth most via turnover. So that's an area of the ground as well that we kind of need to brush up on, because if we just go to opposition averages and we look at turnovers, even though we're quite, strong in this area, I do think that, if the Swans apply pressure, as we've seen, those teams that have beaten us across the entirety of 2025 thus far, those teams that have applied tackling pressure, perceived pressure, everything else, have been able to force turnovers and score off the back of it. I think the Crows, they were able to score, I think it was 9 goals roughly via turnover, which was a big, big stat. And we don't want to be falling into that trap with the Swans. So again, just need to tighten up on that and make sure that we're kicking with a little bit more precision and effectiveness. So that's kind of much for muchness there. Let's have a look at the injury side of things, because it's time to chat about the ins and outs. And there are a couple of forced changes to us. Blake Acres, out for a week. It is being confirmed. He, I think, popped his shoulder in game. Incredible for him to return and play out the game against the Saints, where he was a solid contributor. So tip of the cap to you, Acres. You're an absolute gun, but he is sitting out a week just to help repair that shoulder. And likewise as well, Lachie Cowan is out for 3 weeks at this stage with that hamstring injury. He was going to be subbed out had Gov already not been. But speaking of Gov, he is labelled as a test, and he has been seen at the airport. So he is travelling with the team. At this stage, looks as though he will play. That's the word that is filtering through. So with those forced changes there, Acres and Cowan, I mean, the easy one to think about with Cowan is like, do they go for a Jordan Boyd, or do they go back to the well with Matt Carroll? Those are probably the two options there. Jordan Boyd had 28 disposals, 7 marks in the VFL, and Matt Carroll was the carryover emergency last week. So depends who they want to go for. If Gov doesn't play for some reason or another, if he's a laid out, whatever, I think Matt Carroll will come in and Jordan Boyd will come in for Lachie Cowan. And in terms of Acres, probably Doherty, 38 disposals, 14 marks in the VFL. So again, he is showing form going back to the VFL, but when he's coming back into the senior team, he's just not grasping it. He's not transitioning that form across to senior level. So we all love Doc, and hopefully he can come back and contribute and just recapture that, I guess, confidence in his team, and then in his body, and then with the form that comes with it as well. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But those are probably my changes, I think. Campo as well, Ben of the Ben variety. He had 34 disposals, 5 tackles, was very, very solid. But I think they might kind of allow him to have a little bit more of a run in the VFL and, have a solid contribution across a number of games, not just one. I think this is probably his biggest standout game. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But I think he will get his chance at some point or another. Whether or not it's this week, I don't know, but we'll wait and see again, as I said, when teams are released. Let us know your thoughts down below in terms of changes, who comes in, who goes out, and everything else as well. Expectations, I mean, we'll end things with the verdict. I'm expecting it's going to be a very, very close game. I think the Swans aren't the same Swans outfit that we saw last year. They're missing a whole host of key contributors, Mills, Goulden, the lot as well. Like they've even had Amadi as well, who is kind of he's copped a fair bit of flack, but I think he actually offers a fair bit to the Swans forward line, and I think that's probably the area of the ground that we will be able to expose them. Just in terms of our defensive lineup, we've seen how solid that Sauce has been in recent, across pretty much the entirety of the season to date. Well, not just recent weeks, but I talk in terms of him returning to the team off the back of the layoff that he had with his broken hand, and he's just literally just, fallen back into the same incredible form that he's been in from the start of the season onwards. So he's a big contributor. Wieders, as we always know, he's solid as a rock, and Haynes has been just one of the biggest shining lights for us, I think, especially considering that he did cop a fair bit of flack with his slow start to his, career, his new career, transitioning across to the Baggers. So those 3 guys, I think, will be able to have their way with the Swans. If Gov plays, that's a bonus as well. But it just goes to show that, last week when we lost Gov very, very early, we were able to, I guess, cover his absence. And, Lewis Young as well has been incredible. He's, doing the small things, the one percenters, drifting across and playing at both ends of the ground as well when needed, which is really, really helpful. So that there is, I think, an area of the ground, as I said, that we should expose the Swans. Likewise, up forward, I think as well, we should be able to get the job done. We saw with Charles and Harry, when they're both on their game, we are very, very hard to counter, hard to beat. And, in terms of the aerial prowess of Harry, Charles as well, taking one-handed marks, everything else. So I think it's going to be a very, very close game. I think the one thing that's counting against us is, just the inability to win at the SCG. It is quite a hard ground to win at. And I think I'm hopeful that we win, but I'm also expecting that if we come away with a loss, it is what it is. I'm not going to be too disappointed. I just hope that we come away with a win and, just continue performing like we have in recent weeks. I mean, that game against the Crows was almost a blip on the radar, because outside of that, since the, North Melbourne game, West Coast we won obviously, but we were playing pretty badly then as well. But ever since the North Melbourne game, we've been finding a little bit of continuity and consistency in our game and in the pressure side of our game as well. So I count the Crows game as a bit of a blip, and the fact that we don't play well in Adelaide, especially at Adelaide Oval there against the Crows. So I think there's an opportunity here for us to really, show our mettle at the SCG or in Sydney. So we'll see how things go there. But I am ever so hopeful we continue our good run of form and extend the wins into another week. We'll be back, of course, to review this game in its entirety, hopefully off the back of a win. We'll see you then. Go Baggers.
Have you ever heard the MCG